So this is a video on getting printer notifications from my Amazon Echo. So if I just start from my home page on Home Assist, it's got CR10S Pro printing, which is currently set to on. It's got the printing status, it's got the current state printing from SD card, but the time remaining is unknown because it can only get the time remaining if you're printing from Octoprint. If you print from the SD card, it isn't able to get that variable. And sometimes I like to print from SD card just because when I'm getting that first layer Z-axis right, I can obviously walk up to the printer and adjust the menus from that console, where if I'm printing from Octoprint, I have to do the Z-axis from Octoprint, which at the moment I'm finding very fiddly sometimes to get that first layer. So I'm just going to demonstrate the voice alerts. Hopefully this is going to work. Alexa, printer status.
The printing status is 67.7% complete.
So that rounds it up. It will say the first two digits and then the second decimal place, which is why it's rounded up to 7. So that's quite useful. Now it's unable to say the time remaining because it's unknown. Now what I'm going to do is deliberately unplug the cable from the Raspberry Pi to the printer, because Octoprint is running on my Raspberry Pi. This will still run because it's printing from SD card, but you'll see if I unplug it, it's obviously unable to get the state, so it's going to say another command. So I'm just going to quickly sort of sabotage and unplug the device. So you can see now the variable is all different because I've unplugged the cable. It's unable to know anything. So if I now say the command again, Alexa, printer status.
The printing status is unknown.
See, so it says unknown because it doesn't know. So it's either going to give you three answers, either going to say the printing status is X percentage with X time remaining if it's printed from Octoprint. If it prints from SD card, it will just say the printing status is X complete, but it won't say the time remaining because it can't get that variable. I think it's because it can't read the G-code viewer at the same time. And if the cable is unplugged, but you're printing from SD card, and then you ask it, it will just say the printing status is unknown. So it's quite helpful the way I've done this. So one of the other helpful things I get it to do is answer the question based on the room I'm in. Because this node process flow doesn't have the option of answer the question from the device you've asked the question to, it's just already preset to the Alexa. What I've done is I've got some sensors, so it's either going to just always answer from the lounge, which is where most of the time I'm going to be in, or if I'm lying on my bed, because I've got some pressure sensors, it knows I'm in the bed, and then when I ask the same question, it will answer it in the bed, which is really handy because if I've got prints running at 2 in the morning and I'm asleep, I may want to turn the printer off once it's finished, and I'm not going to keep going into lounge getting up to check. So it will automatically notify me that the printer's finished, but it will notify me in my bedroom and only in my bedroom, which is a really handy feature if you have that set up. So this time I've kicked off a print from Octoprint, so you'll see the interface has got a few more things it's saying, like CR10S Pro current state. It did say from SD card, where now it says printing, and also the time remaining has a value where previously it was unknown. I believe this is because it's able to read the G-code in Octoprint to determine that value. It does say seconds, which is a bit of a pain, but I've made it so it divides it by 60, so that when I get the announcement it will just tell me the minutes. So if I just ask this question, Alexa, printer status.
The printing status is 1.1% complete, with 44.5 minutes remaining.
So you can see this time it tells you the time remaining, where if I'm printing from the SD card, it will only tell me the printer percentage, where now it says printer percentage and minutes remaining, which is a cool little feature. So this is my whole Node-RED process flow. I'm just going to zoom in to make it readable. Now, because I've got more than one Amazon Echo, I want it to say these commands based on the room I'm in. So I've either got it so it knows I'm in the bedroom, or it assumes I'm in the lounge. So it starts off from this one, where I've got this binary sensor. I've basically got a pressure sensor under my bed, and if that is set to on, it's going to then create this variable. So it'll be flow.set I'm in bed is true, and then variable I am in bed status equals flow.get I am in bed, and then message.topic equals I'm in bed status. And then if I'm not in my bed, it's basically the reverse, where it just sends it as a false. Now, you may not actually need this. You might just want it to broadcast to one Alexa, or you may want to make the process flow where it just broadcasts from all of them, but I wanted it to only broadcast from either the lounge or the bedroom based on where I am. So if I go to the printing started one first, so just zoom in a bit more. So here it has binary sensor CR10S Pro printing is on, and if it's on, function command then has message.payload equals 3D printing has started. And these two you may not actually need. It's only if you want it to run on a particular Alexa device. So here it calls the variable obtain data flow.get I am in bed message.topic equals obtain data. So it's basically just trying to determine the status of me being in the bed or not. And then you've got this condition here, if I'm in bed equals true or false. I've also added an otherwise, because sometimes it's not always able to get the status. So if it can't get it, it's just going to assume that I'm in the lounge. So if it's true, it means I'm in the bed. If it's false, I'm not, and otherwise I'm not. So if it is true, when the printing has started, it will then say 3D printing has started from my bedroom, which is my Echo dot. And if I'm not in the bedroom, it's going to say the same thing, but it will say from my second dot, which is the one I've got in the lounge. And the stop command is exactly the same. It just uses that binary sensor CR10S Pro printing, but instead it's looking for the off state, and this process is exactly the same. Message.payload, this time it equals 3D printing is complete instead of 3D printing started. You've then got I am in bed, so it's calling that variable to get the I am in bed status. And then if I am in bed is equal true, it's going to then say that announcement to the bedroom. Otherwise, if it's false or otherwise, it's going to make the assumption that I'm in the lounge. So here again it was saying message.payload Dave's dot, which is the bedroom, and this one here message.payload second dot, which is the one I've got in the lounge. Now this second bit is probably not the best way I've put it together, so it'd be interesting to get people's opinions, because my programming knowledge is non-existent, and I've used a lot of the function nodes, but probably not the most efficient way possible. So what happens here is it's when I'm asking the printer status. So when I say the Alexa word and I ask it printer status, which is basically just a routine I've created which calls one of my devices, it then runs this, which starts off here. It gets the printing state, which is CR10S Pro current state, and message.payload, and what it does here is it's got an if command, because if the Octoprint isn't connected to my printer, well basically if the Raspberry Pi cable is not connected to the printer, then it's obviously not going to work. It's not going to be able to get a value. So I've made it so if it equals unknown, it's just going to do this part here. Well, and what it will then do is it checks the bed status, and then it's if I'm in bed equals true, say it in the bedroom, if false or otherwise say in the lounge, and it's simply just going to sort of finish and say the printing status is unknown. And then if I'm in the lounge, it will also say the printing status is unknown. If it is known, then it will go to this part where it gets the printing state, and then it's going to determine whether I'm printing from my SD card or I'm printing from Octoprint. So if it's printing from the SD card, it's going to follow the top flow, otherwise it's going to follow the bottom flow. So this part here, it uses when I'm printing from SD card, and the one underneath is when I'm printing from Octoprint. So here it does job percentage, so it's calling that sensor, and because it uses loads and loads of decimal places, I've made it get rid of them by using, I think it's this one here, it just makes it to 1 or fixes it. And then if you go to the next one, message.payload equals the printing status is plus message.payload, which is basically the printing process, and then it says percentage complete. So it would sound like the printing status is 28% complete. And then again it checks whether I'm in my bedroom or not, which you've seen this a few times now. And then the same thing if I'm in my bed or not, or otherwise. It will now say here message.payload. So then if I'm printing from SD card, it will just simply say the printing status is X% complete, either in the bedroom or it will call it in the lounge. Now if I'm printing from Octoprint, because it's able to get the time remaining, it has a few more pieces it does. So it starts off here, it gets a time remaining, and I make the time remaining become message.time. So it goes to here, message.payload equals message.time, and then you've got here, it calls the sensor job percentage equals message.payload. So it removes those decimals and just rounds it up to the nearest one. Then I go to here where it's message.time equals message.time divided by 60. Now that's because it's saying seconds and I want it to tell me minutes, so I simply just divided it by minutes to get the seconds, and then it just sort of rounds it up to one decimal. And then message.payload equals the printing status is message.payload, which is the printing status, and then it will say percentage complete with, and it's got message.time, which is the minutes remaining. So you'll hear it saying the printing percentage is 28% complete with 57 minutes remaining, as an example. And then the same thing again, it's just checking whether I'm in my bed or not. So I don't need to detail this because I've already done it. And then based on true or false or otherwise. In the bedroom it's just going to call message.payload, and in the lounge it will call message.payload. So that's the way I've done it. At the moment all it can really do is when the printer starts it tells me, when the printer finishes it tells me, and I can ask it the printer status, and if it's printing from Octoprint it will tell me the percentage and the time remaining based on the room I'm in. And if I want it, if it's printing from SD card, it will just say the percentage, because it can't do the time remaining because Octoprint isn't able to read. I believe it's something to do with the way the G code isn't running from it directly. It'd be interesting to see how you sort of look at this. I mean, you might think it's overly complicated, or there's a slightly better way of me using the function nodes. Another thing that would be really cool is if I could add commands where I can tell it to do things, like if I could tell it to set the printing speed to 100% to 50%, that would be really cool. Or if I could tell it to pause printing or stop printing. That's another thing I might add into this flow, but I'm still getting to know or getting familiar with this. But it'd be interesting to see your feedback on how you think this is, or if you've got any suggestions on how I can improve this. Another thing I forgot to mention is, if you are wondering how I managed to integrate Octoprint into Home Assist, I actually followed that from another YouTuber, so instead of me mentioning it, I'm just going to add that in the description so you can just copy and follow his process. And also, the way the bed knows I'm in the bed, that was also copied from another YouTuber, so I'm just going to, again, copy his video in the description, so if you wanted to have that function, there's no point me explaining it because he does a much better job and you can just follow those videos.